Hello everyone, I'm on for day 4 of the Build a Safe Home class, introductory class, live stream. We're coming on. I'm sorry I'm late today. Actually, I'm just trying to bring up the website. So the place you find this Build a Safe Home Master, all right, so you're getting in your email the introductory course. That's an hour of a lot of robust information. So don't let that go by. It's free this week. Yeah. So, but what we are talking about is the Build a Safe Home Master Course that I have, which the introductory course is an introduction to that. And so the place that you go to find that and learn more about the masterclass is on my website at avoidingmold.com. I'm going there right now. It's under courses. It's the very first course, and then you can scroll down, you can see all the things that are included in it. And so we're on day 4. And so we're talking about the 4th module of the course, which is walls. So we talked about site design, which was module 1. We talked about building design overall, which is module number 2. Unit number 3, module number 3 was foundations. So we talked about that yesterday. And unit number 4, oops, I'm actually wrong. Unit number 4 is the roof. Okay, so I messed up. Unit number 4 is the roof. Unit number 5 is walls. And then there's a bonus module of number 6, which is the contracts. So let's talk about the roof. And the roof includes an overview of roof terms, and roofs can be very, very complicated and have a lot going on, or they can be very simple. I do recommend that they're simple. And that doesn't mean that your floor plan has to necessarily be simple, but it does need to be coordinated. So complicated isn't good. There are some things you can do that can be intersections and roofs that are actually pretty simple to do. And what we don't want to do is end up with places in our roofs that don't drain. So, and that is way more common than you realize. And I think you'll see something in the introductory course if you guys have been on there. So we're going to talk about roof slope. So a lot of people are in the mold groups talk about that we shouldn't have a flat roof. Well, let's just be clear that no roof is completely flat. Even flat roofs have to have a slope. By code, they have to have a slope. The water has to go somewhere. And the slope is minimal. Usually you can't see it because it's behind a parapet of some sort or some other kind of roof deck, some sort of roof barrier, fascia board, something like that. But they always have a slope. And so water has to go somewhere. There's nowhere on this planet that doesn't get water sometimes. So the roof slope is going to be really critical. I do recommend a roof slope for most people on a home. But if you love the modern design and you want to have a flat roof or have a flat roof somewhere, know that it is possible to do it. It's possible to do it well, but it must be sloped. It must have a slope, even though it's quote unquote a flat roof and looks like a roof. So then the next module in this section is talking about roof water control. So now in the very first module, we talked about climate and site. And with climate comes all kinds of different things that are gonna relate to our roof. So if you're in a cold climate where there's ice and snow potential, then that's going to have different details that are very, very important to keep in mind. But if you're in the south somewhere where you have wind events, if you're in anywhere in the middle of the country, actually there's nowhere in the country that doesn't have the potential for 100 mile an hour wind events. And so we have to take that into account. How do we keep the roof on the building? As soon as something can happen and the roof can be breached, can have a hole in it, or can be lifted off of the walls, then that is going to open up our whole structure to a lot more water damage than if we can keep the roof on. Even if the roofing were to come off, if we can keep the roof itself on, the structure of the deck on, then we would be a lot safer in a storm, and it would be easier to recover from that. So roof water control is a big deal. Plus, when we do have rain, then there's how does the water get off the roof? And we want to be careful because there are cases where the water can actually be either driven by rain and wind, can end up going under roofing materials, or where there's intersections can end up going between materials, even against gravity. So these are things that are complicated and that we do have to pay attention to. So roof water control, I do recommend gutters. That is a piece of roofing, is how the gutters are connected. Sometimes gutters can be installed incorrectly, or some of the flashing can be incorrect, and they can actually cause water to back up into places that we don't want it to go. So, but generally I do like gutters. There's a few situations where they would be challenging. Obviously, very high snow load locations, it can be challenging, but that doesn't mean that they can't be used. So they just will require more design. But there are some considerations on that. We do also want to consider overhangs, and that's something that I talk a lot about in this course and in everything that I do, is that one of the best insurance policies that we can do for our building, and that we can basically incorporate into our building, is to do large overhangs, so that basically our roof is a giant umbrella over the building that's protecting everything else. That's protecting the walls and protecting the foundation, maybe protecting the ground next to the foundation. So there's been studies. It seems really straightforward and kind of obvious that if you have a big overhang on your building and you're keeping the zone, the wall and the openings in the walls and the ground and the foundation dry under that overhang, that it makes sense that you would have less defects, less water damage in the walls, less degradation related to water damage. But somebody has actually studied this, and they did find that when there's little to no overhang, that the water damage impacts and the defects related to water damage were much greater. Seems obvious, but they did do a study on it, and they got the results that I would have expected them to get, and that if the optimal size would be anywhere between 18 and 24 inches. But know that if your building is very tall, or if you have a section of building that's very tall, that the overhang is also related to the height. So if you're doing a ranch and it's very low to the ground and you have a 2-foot overhang, there's a lot more protection there than if part of the wall is 2-story. And so it's basically up 20 feet. And then maybe it's going to protect the top part of the wall, but it may not do as much protection for the bottom part of the wall just because it's so far away. So these are all things that we look at. Then we're going to talk about venting and insulation. And you can and whether you have vented or unvented roofs, and how you figure out what the right amount of venting is. There's actually science around this. And it's not just a matter. Venting requires an in and an out. So ventilated, anytime somebody uses the term ventilated, it means there's an in and an out. So just opening a window in a room, say a small room with 4 walls, and it has one window, you open that one window and you really don't have ventilation. You might get a little air in there depending on which way the wind is blowing, but without cross ventilation, without an in and an out, if it's really nice and cool outside and you're sitting in this room baking, it's going to be hard to bring that air in if nature isn't doing it because it's blowing that wind in your direction. So when we talk about ventilation, we are talking about an in and an out. Usually that needs to be balanced, although there's some science to suggest that a little imbalance might be helpful. This is an ongoing discussion. So as a sustainability movement has taken us forward and we're doing more insulation, we've tightened up our buildings more than we ever have throughout history. We're finding things that are working a little differently than we might have expected. And so I've actually saw an article recently about southern states, which are very warm, and that you can do unvented roofs there successfully, but they're finding that even in an unvented roof, it might be a good idea to have kind of a relief valve, meaning some sort of roof vent, so that just from the stack effect, the stack effect is nature's way of pushing air from low to high. And it does this in buildings. It does it in high rises even more than it does it in residential buildings. But there's a natural stack effect in buildings that's taking the air from lower sections of the building and it's pushing it up out the roof. And with that can come moisture. So, and if the moisture is trapped and allowed to collect somewhere, then that can cause problems. And so in very hot and humid climates, the studies are showing, and this is basically a 2021 study, so that's when I'm doing this video, is that they're finding that in some of these locations, it might be good to actually just have a vent to let some of that out, regardless of whether you have a vented roof. So that's a little bit contrary to what I'm saying about an in and out, but this is where the science is constantly changing, and I try to do my best to stay on top of it. And I share with you what I'm learning. If I'm going to change my opinion on something, you'll be the first ones to know. But do know that it is complicated and we're going to do the best that we can. It's good to look at history and see what worked and what hasn't worked. It's good to understand the challenges when we make a decision. And generally, some ventilation is going to be better than none, but we do want to control it. And sometimes we put in too much ventilation and we've got gable vents and we got soffit vents and we got a ridge vent. And now none of it's working properly because we've circumvented the system. So there's certain systems that work a certain way, and then if you decide to, more isn't always better, I guess would be my description for that. Then we have, I talked about the stack effect. We also have wind current pressures on our buildings, and so depending on the slope of the roof, you'll have different kinds of pressures on our buildings as the wind comes either up and over the roof or that it's hitting the roof on the side. So these are all things that are impactful on our building and actually changes the way our buildings function and the way the air moves through our buildings. So if the wind is blowing, if you have a box and that's your house and the wind is blowing against one wall of your box, then you have positive pressure on one side. Sometimes you'll have, as the wind is going up and over the roof, that'll be causing a positive pressure on side of the roof and a negative pressure on the other side. So if you have positive on one side, you usually have negative on the other. And so this can impact how air moves through our buildings and how we sometimes can be affected by mold in places where some people might say, oh, you have mold in your attic, that's not going to affect you. You have mold in your walls, that's not going to affect you. Well, I would challenge that assertion, and that's why we want to focus on the design of these elements, because the air currents are way more complicated than that, in that there is the potential that air currents can move through our walls, move through our roofs, and impact the air quality of the place that we are. It may not be all the time, but it is something that can happen periodically. And if it's happening at night for some reason, when you're sleeping, then that's all you need to get sick. So then the fifth module of the roof unit is on roof details. And so that's really, really critical. I did a video this morning. You can check out my other outlets on YouTube and Instagram, but I did one this morning where, you can do a house basically pretty well at the beginning, and then it can all fall apart in the details. So there's a lot of coordination when it comes to a roof, because the roof is connected to other parts of the building. It's connected to the wall, maybe connected to gutters. And then the wall is connected to the foundation. The foundation is connected to the site. All these interfaces might involve different contractors. So the person doing the roofing, the roof materials, the finished roofing materials, may have nothing to do with the person doing the wall materials, even though they're going to be touching each other. And so there can be places where something bad can happen because someone may say, well, that's not my job. That guy was supposed to do that. And now our job is just to put a roof on it. So that's where it gets complicated. I think my best and a really good job at simplifying some of this so that lay people can understand it. But if you are a professional, I guarantee that this is going to be helpful as well, because it is complicated stuff. And then the final lesson in this section is on gutters. And again, the devil's in the details. It's not just slapping up gutters. It's how the gutters are actually connected. And as you would expect, there are nuances and there's ways that water will end up going against gravity by capillary action and going between tiny spaces that we want to protect against. So we do talk about gutters as they're related to the roof in this module. So that's it on what I can tell you about roofs without jumping into this course. I hope some of you have gotten on and gotten into the introductory course. If you are not seeing it in your email, look in your spam folder, or your promotions folder would be another place. But we have had a lot of people opening them, so I know people are getting them. And I also know the challenges of trying to figure out where stuff goes. So I get that too. So if you are having a difficulty, you can reach out to us at care@avoidingmold.com. But I think if you check those places first, you'll find your information. And then tomorrow is our last day. And so for those of you that are paying attention, there's going to be a free checklist, a builder's checklist, ask your builder checklist that's going to be in your email tomorrow. And also, what else do we have? We have maybe a promo. So check that out. But we would love to see you in the Build a Safe Home course, the Build a Mold Safe Home, Build a Safe Home course. It is very robust. As I said, I come on once a month. I am going to be coming on live like this on December 29th. That's our next scheduled Build a Safe Home live Q&A session. People can send their questions in advance. They can send more than one. You can send pictures if you want, and I will incorporate them into a presentation to get your question answered, because usually if you have a good question, and most people do, then other people have a similar question. And my goal is to clarify as much as possible. And Golda, I see your comment that you're not finding it. I would recommend reaching out to Kara. Maybe she can send it to you directly there. Otherwise, maybe we can figure out something else with one of my other team members to give you a call. So what were the words in the email on the subject? I don't know, but I think that my assistant is on this call, and hopefully she can put what the subject words are. Day 4, mold safe building. Try that in your review. So so there are a lot of other bonuses that come with the Build a Mold Safe Home, including some free ongoing membership, 3 months for free to get started for the Dwell Well Institute. And know that this is a 6-week course. So what you're getting this week is a 1-day, watch it for an hour course, jam-packed with information, because that's always my goal. But the masterclass is 6. I would give yourself 6 weeks to go through it. Go through 1 module a week. As I said, each module has sub-modules in it, so like sub-chapters in it. And so you can parcel it out very easily, and you can digest it very easily. You can watch sections over and over if you need to. And there's also PDFs associated with all of this. And then there's lots and lots, many, many hours of Q&A, because every time we do the Q&As, we save them. And so you could be driving to work every day and listening to Q&As and learning tons. So I'm always thrilled with the kinds of questions that we get. We get great questions. And even if they're similar, sometimes they get asked in a different way. And so it gives me an opportunity to explain something yet again in another better way. So if anybody has any questions, I can see some comments. They scroll by pretty fast. I know we have some people on. And tomorrow will be Unit 5, which is going to be walls and openings. And then, then we're going to be done. So get on and watch the course, the introductory course. Please let us know what you think of it. I am curious. I'm always looking for feedback, and we're always looking for ways to make our content better and more accessible and more helpful to you. So if you have any other great ideas on how we could continue to improve the education that's out there, improve awareness, help more people to understand this, because air quality is really, that's ubiquitous. When we're trying to protect our health, and we always are, the one thing we can't be without is the air we breathe. So we can fast from food for a day. You can even go from water for maybe a day. But those are the 3 most important: food, water, and the air that you breathe. And the air that you breathe when you're sleeping is when your body's trying to heal. Sleeping is when your body's repairing itself. So if the air that you're breathing when you're sleeping is affected by any kind of toxin, it is very likely that that's also burdening your immune system. And then other things can come along, whether it's bacteria or viruses, or even burdens on our DNA that we're just susceptible to. So it could be autoimmune diseases, it could be a whole host of other possibilities. What's the best way to provide feedback? Email. If you want to email to care@avoidingmold.com, I think that would be the best way. We will collect those. So Jeff, yeah, let us know. Gold is asking, not really on this topic, how to check if a rental is moldy. Visible mold is not an indication of whether you have mold or not, unfortunately. I have clients with very high-end homes and clients that are in very affordable homes that have similar exposures. And sometimes there's higher end, some of those high-end ones are really, really affected. Don't be swayed by something that's what I would call lipstick on a pig. So, and that's why understanding these concepts that are in the Build a Safe Home course, even if you're not building, understanding what it takes to build well is a great foundation to understanding what's going wrong in our buildings and what to look for. So if you know what can go wrong, then you can look around and you can say at buildings that are already built and say, wait, I don't think they did that thing that was in the Build a Safe Home course. And they probably didn't. So there's a lot of things that are being overlooked. Like I said, it's very complicated. It's going to take a team. It's going to take everybody collaborating, everybody creating awareness. People who have been exposed to water damage and mold and have health issues are the people who are willing to pay extra for quality. And I get that. And it's a growing population. And hopefully builders and suppliers will start to get that as well. And have an alternative for those of us that are willing to pay for quality. Leanne is saying, I know you said newer homes aren't necessarily safer, but aren't they less likely to have leaks and water damage? They are not less likely to have leaks and water damage, actually. So what's happened is that the people who are working on buildings in the old days, this contractor builders were very specialized trades, and it's become something that is become less specialized oftentimes. We have definitely raised our standards as home consumers, home buyers, in that we want all this fancy stuff with sustainability. We want the granite countertops. We want all fancy stuff, maybe because we can, and then have lost track of the really quality details that made our buildings safe. So new construction's going up very quickly. Some of the materials that you can't see might be not as great a quality as you might have hoped, and might have been the case when there wasn't as many choices back in the day. So I would say I have moldy homes that are brand new that I am inspecting. And so if the homes get rained on during construction, and with these very speedy construction schedules, where it's, get the house done, and nobody's paying attention to the saturation level of the materials, especially wood materials. And I do recommend wood materials, but once they become very, very saturated, whether it was from sitting on a job site and sitting in the dirt, or from being rained on and being overlooked in terms of that there's a puddle there every single day, and maybe we should do something about that. Our buildings the structure needs to be dry before we put something like drywall up that's paper. The coating on drywall is pre-digested mold food, it's paper. But any material is not going to withstand the burdens of high humidity and trapped moisture. So, even for me, I've looked at newer homes, and I don't know that I could buy one unless I knew the builder and really had a good sense of the kind of buildings they were building. I will build myself again, but I know what I'm doing, and I'm doing a lot more detail than anybody else ever does. My drawings have a lot of pages, and honestly, when you go to sell that, people are saying, "Oh, well, nobody's going to pay for that," and that's a bit of a bummer. But there's no price that we can put on our health, and so that's what really matters. And so building something that's going to really help support air quality and correcting what we have can go a really long way. So I don't know if there's any other questions. I'm not sure if I can see some of the, yeah. So I think the other things is that we are able to do roofs and stuff that are very complicated. Again, simple roofs. And check the roof. Just go and look at the roof when you're looking at buildings and say, yeah, where's the water go? And follow the path. And if the water is ending up against a wall, that's a bad thing. Very bad thing. And eventually the water is just going to keep rolling up against the wall and wicking into the wall and leaking into the wall, because we rarely are protecting those spaces. So where materials come together is critical. But where roofs are sloping into chimneys, roofs are sloping into bump outs, oh, that looks really good. Let's put a bay window and bump the wall out here. Sometimes that can be a disaster. So in terms of materials, some materials are easier to use than others. Again, this is going to be what trades are in your area. If there's a lot of people doing tile roofs in your area, because it's really common, there's a good chance you can find somebody good to do that type of roof. If you're going to pick something that nobody's ever done before and that isn't common in your area, it might be hard to find installers that are used to doing it and used to doing it well. In any case, you'll probably have to pay them more to really focus on the details, and you might want to also learn the details that are required. So in terms of materials, there's certainly more durable materials than others. I would say that roofing is one of the materials that I'm not worried about affecting air quality very much. So in terms of off-gassing, not that worried about, you might off-gas when you're around it, when they're putting it on, but I'm not that concerned. In fact, because of the UV of the sun degrading materials, roofing materials need to be very, very robust and very, very durable. And it's really important that we know that they have withstood the test of time. I talked in an earlier video about a roof shingle that was made out of asphalt, or is made out of recycled car tires. And this is something that during my career came out. It was really exciting. Everybody was really thought it was a great idea. What a great use to, for using those extra car tires that have become bald and end up in a dump. And it seemed like a good idea. They did the testing, and what ended up happening is people put it on their homes. They spent a lot of money to put it on their homes, and the roofing ended up failing in about 5 years. And so the people roofs are a lot of money. Any kind of roofing it's a big part of our buildings. So the thing to know is that the warranty of any material is only as good as the company that's warrantying it. And so if it's a newer company that's only been in business for 5 years and they're going to give you a 50-year warranty, well, they got to be in business in 50 years to give you that warranty. And what's the chances of that happening? If the company has been around for 100 years already and they're giving you a 50-year warranty, there's a better chance that it might be worthwhile. But read the fine print. There's no warranty that I've read on building materials where I've thought, wow, that's really great. Most of them have exclusions and limitations that'll get rid of anything that's substantial in terms of a liability for them. And usually they're going to replace the materials, but it's going to be your labor. So when this happened with the asphalt shingles, basically the company went out of business that had car tire shingles, excuse me. The company that created these, and I don't even know if there was more than one, but the company that created it and sold it just went out of business because they couldn't afford, they didn't have the resources to pay all the claims to fix it, and they actually didn't have a solution. So while they had tried to duplicate UV exposure over a long period of time in a laboratory, it wasn't the same as actually being outside. And who knows if there's something else that's dropping out of planes or acid rain or what's going on in our environment that could also be affecting the roofing material. But so roofing does need to be really durable, and I would be using products that have a long life of example that we can see that it's holding up well. Now, wood roofs are an example of a roof that actually does hold up really, really well, wood shingle roofs. However, some of the installation practices have evolved to where they're not good, and some of the materials have become more affordable and are less of a good quality material. So, so it's all about the details of how something gets installed. It can be installed well, or it can be installed poorly. Generally, the simpler a system is, the simpler it is to install, the simpler it is for people to know how to install it, the better chances you're going to have that it's going to be successful. So, Angela's from Florida, where they build houses poorly. So the thing about some of these the climates that are very warm, and I talk about this in the climate section, is that it's very easy to build cheaply because it's very mild, the temperatures, you're not that worried about insulation and air sealing and air moving through the building because it's really mild. Nobody's going to notice. In some place like North Dakota or Minnesota, those really northern states, Montana probably would be the same, Canada for sure, it's really cold in the winter. So if it's going to be 30 degrees in the winter, or 30 degrees below zero, the building has to be built really well or it's going to be very uncomfortable. And so I tend to see better construction, I would say, in places that have colder temperatures. So when you go to the places that are really warm, it's really easy to slap something up and everybody feels good. And air conditioning isn't as hard to feel comfortable in as it is to feel that the air is warm when it's 30 degrees below zero outside and the wind is blowing. So that's my experience. And Leanna's from Kentucky, and all our cheap. So houses and apartments are cheap. It's a thing. We as consumers, I have to say, are kind of into getting a lot for little, and so trying to find people that are willing to do quality, we have to pay for quality. Angela's mentioning about fresh air intakes bringing in by the AC, bringing in moisture. Yeah, so that's again a new product. It's not actually that new, but HRVs and ERVs are bringing in ventilation, and they have to be able to be turned off when it's really humid outside. We cannot be bringing in humid air into our buildings and then expect that our systems, whether usually it's air conditioning, can handle that humid air any more than in a state like, where it's 30 below in the winter, that we can have an HRV or ERV bringing in 30 degree below zero temperatures and expect that our heat is going to keep up with that. So know that, anything that's new, people are all running out to buy, what are they? They don't want to use forced air because they don't want the ductwork because the ductwork gets moldy. Well, it's not the ductwork's fault. The ductwork gets moldy because there's mold in the air. So then they want to go with a mini split or a ductless system. Well, we don't do that much here in North America. At least it's not as prevalent as the regular forced air systems. And so it seems like such a good idea because you don't know that many people that have had mold with those systems. However, I will say that in Europe, they're very plentiful, and there's a lot of mold in them in Europe. And you have to maintain everything. You got to maintain whatever system that you do, and if it's not maintained, there is no house component that we can say, okay, I'm good for 30 years, I never have to look at it. No, we got to check filters, we have to get them serviced, we have to have them maintained, and basically they're health checked. So let's see, I had something here. Looking for quality, investing in it supports the growth of the more mold aware options in the industry. And that's what I'm saying, is that those of us that care, and there's a lot of us. I mean, my group has 5,000 people in it that's on Facebook, and there's other groups with more than that. And so I know there are many, many people. In fact, I think there's probably millions of people that are affected by this. Some don't know about it yet. But the way to change the industry is going to end up having to be from the bottom up, where we mention that we tell people this matters, and that I want to buy moisture content 15 lumber for my project. How do I get it? If there's a lot of people asking for that, then the lumber yards will supply it, because somebody will be asking for it. But if it's all driven by cost, and the only thing people care about is cost, and there are a lot of people that's all they care about, they're all worried about their food that's processed food coming from China, and because they can't get it because it's stuck on a boat somewhere, because it's really, really cheap. So we have to decide that quality matters, and that we want to pay for it. We're willing to pay for it. And that matters as much as the granite countertop and the fancy lighting, or whatever else, the fixtures, whatever, faucets, whatever it is that we're going to spend a lot of money on, and decide that actually we do care what's behind the walls and the roof. We do care what's in the attic. So with roofs is a discussion of attics. And we shouldn't be running our HVACs through the attics. I talked about that in the building design. So there's a lot of planning involved. So failing to plan is planning to fail. Have you ever heard that? I think it's really true, that everything needs to be figured out before we start building our building. And if we're going to just fly by the seat of our pants and figure it out on the job site, we're going to end up with what we see everywhere, which is buildings that are flawed. So the reason we created this How to Build a Safe Home course was so homeowners can be informed when speaking to their builders. If you're a builder, this is for builders with integrity to really hone their skills and do a great job. Cover all their bases. This is like an insurance policy. What could we be doing wrong, and what could we do better? And so use it for that. I am very proud of the Build a Safe Home course. Put a lot of effort into it. It takes a very long time to create all this stuff. And it is the most important things that are required to build a mold-safe building in one place. And I don't know of anything else that's doing that in the way that I am, by someone like myself, who is a licensed architect with a story of being affected by this stuff, which means my research that I've done has been to save me and my family. And I leave no stone unturned, and I look at every argument, pro and con, and if necessary, as I said earlier, I change my opinions if it's warranted. But this is something that I'm constantly researching, and it is not going to go away. So check out the Build a Safe Home course. Get through that introductory video that you should have received. It shouldn't be difficult to get through it. I think again, I'm really proud of that as well, but you'll hear more about my story there. And you'll see lots of pictures. And that is the best way to start opening eyes, to look around and see what is going on in our world, so that we could do it better. And so that we could ask for it to be done better. That we could ask for the building codes to be enforced. Some things are in the building codes, but nobody's enforcing them. So we need to know, I think that's required. Isn't that required? Cheryl told me that was required. And then you can go look at the notes and find, here's the code listings of what are the codes. Here are the places to go to send your builders and say, hey, it says right here. One of the tips I can give you before I end this call is always, always, always add into your contracts and reference in the installation instructions. So there's installation instructions in everything. Even the codes talk about how things should be installed, and they will say according to recommendations by such and such an agency. And every agency is trying to have their material shown in the best light possible. It could be concrete, could be steel, could be the wood industry, could be the engineered wood industry. And so, but understanding the best practices, reading directions. And as human beings, we want to just jump in and I don't need to read the directions. Let's just jump in and build it. I know how to build it. And then we're missing details that matter. So a quick story on a roof before I end. This is one of my stories, is that in my house, in my office where I'm sitting right now, I have skylights, or actually roof windows. And a lot of people say you don't do them because they leak. They are more difficult to install. They can be installed well, but I'm going to tell you why they often leak. So even on my house, the contractors who are putting in the skylights, I'm watching them every step of the way, and then they're done. But I'm not on the roof. Then they're done, and there's extra pieces. There's extra. So I bought this flashing kit with the window to make sure that it would be done right and waterproof. I kind of read through the instructions, but I'm not standing on the roof with them. So at the end, there's extra pieces. This is one of those cases where you put together the kids' toys, whatever, for a present. And it's like, wait, there's extra washers and there's an extra bar and there's an extra screw, and you're starting to wonder, where was that supposed to go? What did I not do right? And this is that case, is that there shouldn't have been any extra pieces. And so fortunately, my husband actually has experience working in the roofing industry. It's something that he did to get through college. And so he's comfortable walking on roofs. So I had to bring him over and tell everybody to stop. We're going to take it off. And he actually went on the roof with the instructions in hand. They took the flashing kit off again, which is a lot easier to do before the roofing is done and before everybody's done. So we have all the pieces. What would have happened if I wasn't there is, I guarantee you those extra pieces would have ended up in the dumpster. And I would never have known that pieces were missing. But we were there, and you know when there's something complicated, you're just going to have to be there, or hire someone to babysit and pay attention, or say that when you're done, I want to check. So my husband went up there with the instructions in hand and went through every step of the instructions. Let me tell you, these instructions come in every language you can imagine. So they come in Spanish, they come in Polish, I think they come in Korean. There's no language that these instructions are not in, so you can get them in other languages if it's necessary. But he was on with the English instructions, and he was going through step by step, and sure enough, when they were done, there were no extra pieces. And it's been about 15 years later, and I have no indication that my roof is leaking. It's great. I love having that kind of light in my roof. We have another skylight that's similar that we had to pay attention to in the same way. So, but insulating around that kind of thing is a challenge too. So just know, if you're going to do things that are more complicated, that there's going to be more attention that's going to need to be paid, one, to monitor the construction for it to get built, and there's going to be more attention need to be made in the drawings. Now, sometimes we do the right things in the drawings. We pay the architect to do the drawings, but the drawings don't make their way over to the actual construction site the way we would like them to. So I am on top of that when I'm doing, so construction project management is something that you may want to have, but know that for those of you that are architects out there doing this, there's a responsibility that comes with that, and that you're going to have to be paying attention. Do not outsource details to anybody else. So there is a tendency in the industry, again, to save money. Homeowners say, yeah, the drawings are too expensive. Can we get them cheaper? Well, yeah. If the architect doesn't draw any details, and he can give you the drawings cheaper. Don't do that, because then there's going to be a note on the drawing that says, details by contractor. The contractor doesn't do the research that we're talking about doing and make sure, so that nobody has the time for this stuff unless you're going to pay them to have had the time. So, but you can always bring me on. I do consulting, and I do join architects, especially on projects, as the moisture management consultant, where I can identify, like, okay, these things are all places that are something we have to focus on, that are potential flaws. So let's get them right now. And so I do that, and you can check that out on my website. But buy the Build a Safe Home course. That is the best way to fast track yourself to this information. And then if you need to consult with me, then we can start at a whole different level if you've basically spent the 6 hours learning and the additional hours reading, listening to Q&A. Then just consider an appointment with me, every module, and get through it, and then we can start at a completely different level. And so it's very, very cost-effective way to work with me. So Leanne's saying, I wish I would sell house plans that you could just take to builders. If the builders don't follow them, it won't matter. And my house plans will cost more than everyone else's because I'm going to have a ton of details in them. But that being said, that is something I'm thinking of. So I do have a guest house plan that I built that is great. If somebody wants to work on it, that would give me the incentive to get the drawings done to the level that they need to be done, and so that I could sell it. So if somebody's interested in that or interested in a simple plan, I do have architects that I work with regularly that I can recommend. That does not mean you're not going to have to consult with me. So the architects that I'm going to recommend are just architects that are open to my information and they want to learn. And they're usually have a lower hourly rate than mine is, since I'm not really drawing regularly and they like to draw. So I can collaborate that way as well. So I think we've been on long enough, and thank you all for being here again. We'll be on one more day tomorrow. And then as I'm getting more used to doing this, maybe I'm hoping that I can come on and do this more on a regular basis. So I appreciate your feedback, and check out the course and buy the course. Join us there. I look forward to seeing, I love those students and we're connected. I know them. And it is a great way to communicate on a project that you're working on. Anybody who's looking to have me help them out on a build, get the Build a Safe Home course and start learning there. So there's a link on the consulting that's down below. I am going to take some time off on the holidays, so it might be harder to connect with me then. But we'll be back in business for the new year, and we're always hoping to keep creating more and more awareness. So share this with other people, and let's do better buildings. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next video. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.